Episode 27, the 15th of November 1998. You remember how impressed I was about the ceaseless flowering of Erysimum mutabile winter joy, that's a wallflower? They are now dead. I couldn't bring myself to prune them, and it seems that they've flowered themselves to death. I'm not sure that I believe that plants can flower themselves to death, but garden writing is so full of such extravagant assumptions that I thought I could probably get away with it. The base of the plant was full of fresh shoots, as good a sign as any that it would be safe to cut back hard. But the young shoots, unable to cope with the huge expectations placed on them, turned weak and sickly and then died. When they are replaced, I shall take cuttings and occasionally replace the entire plant, rather than depend on new shoots. This should not normally be the case, I'm sure. Plants such as these can last for ages, but I think they had it too good to begin with. Very fast growers like these often last longer when grown hard, not flabby and soft as I grew them. The gravel garden, where the Erysimum resided, is just now reaching a critical point of volume so as to look satisfyingly full. One thing that will not happen quickly, however, despite my intentions of creating this garden within 12 months, is structure. Plant structure, that is. Hard landscaping can go a long way to make a garden feel established, and arches, trellis and pergolas can give an immediate sense of enclosure. Herbaceous perennials and tall annuals can provide incredible bulk over summer, but when the weather warms up, the volume goes with it and leaves nothing behind. I remember reading that Beth Chatto was surprised just how satisfying her gravel garden was over winter. I was just as surprised at how unsatisfying mine was. It's not easy to get any shrub volume in 1 year, particularly when you overestimate the frost tolerance of key players or depend on erratic sorts of things like Euphorbia coraceus, all of which collapsed in midsummer. The Leonotus, which was brilliant last autumn, died after the first couple of frosts. The Lavatera maritima only just survived, but it's yet to really shoot. I was hoping these would carry me through. I shall choose my shrubs more carefully this summer and place them better so as to leave a reasonable framework when all the ephemeral stuff is over. It's so tempting to fill all the gaps with uncommon annuals. Instead, I must discipline myself to put in shrubs, though I know they won't reach the desired height this season, and also remember to keep them from being swamped by the surrounding growth. My mother-in-law went home the other day, determined to plant some chives in her flower garden. My 2 huge clumps of them are about the best thing in flower at the moment. If they were listed amongst the ornamental alliums, we would be prepared to pay handsomely for them. At the other end of the gravel garden is a large clump of another purple allium, much deeper purple than chives, with papery flowers creating a tight sphere on stoutish stems named Allium rotundum Jalea. I have had it in a pot for years where it did okay, and in which its character seemed retiring and shy. I planted it at the end of its half-hearted flowering last year, and it immediately erupted from the ground in a dense forest of young growth. Countless flower spikes followed, seemingly way out of season, but were caught with too little warm weather left and had to sit tight and bide time all winter, which they did without a complaint. I, on the other hand, faced winter indoors in front of a heater and didn't stop complaining. They're now flowering for all they're worth and on stems of a strength I wouldn't have thought possible from past efforts. They've at least quadrupled in quantity. It looks like it's going to be one of those alliums, those scary alliums that seed themselves everywhere. Nearby is another little-known species yet to flower. Very little known, in fact, for it's yet to be named, according to the collector who gave it to me. It has also grown in a pot for many years and is obviously enjoying the root space now in the ground. In total contrast to that above, this has loose flower heads in which each individual flower is pendulous, giving the effect of a tiny skyrocket exploding. The structure is very like the yellow Allium flavum, also nearby, but the colour is the palest of pinks, almost white. Suspecting that it might be lost against the background, I've underplanted it with Sedum virigamisson. It beats me why these smaller alliums have not been common in our gardens for many years. They love our climate and come in a good range of colours and interesting flower shapes. The larger, showier species are finally getting around, thanks mostly to the cut flower industry, but these small ones are virtually unknown. Perhaps we're afraid of their weed potential. Allium triquitum, which I've always known as onion weed, has certainly made itself thoroughly at home in the bush. Strangely, I can pass huge sweeps of them on the roadside and snarl. But if I stumbled across a large clump of the somewhat similar, though much, much rarer snowdrops, the Glanthus species, in this country, I would set up camp beside them and dwell there, hermit-like, for the duration of their flowering. Our ideas of what constitutes beauty are very complex, very loaded. Who would have thought that choosing gravel for a gravel garden should be such a decision? I thought I'd just get gravel, and now have to choose between crushed granite from Dramana, Campbellfield, and countless other places, and gravel from Seymour, peppered, palish, Torquay, pale and yellow, Yea, peppered, dark, or Bacchus Marsh, sandy to pale grey. I think it needs to be pale, as part of the point in using it is to activate the background in a way that is never achieved with bare soil. I think that dark gravel will read as soil, but if it's too pale, it'll be glary in sunny weather and strain the eyes, as can large areas of sandstone paving. Something in between, I think, and as peppered as possible.